The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1487, Delegate Mangione. House Rules by Order of Sylvia Seeger, Chief Clerk.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of House Bills 1487 through 1498.
Hearing no objection, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Clerk will read the bond initiatives and the committee assignment.
Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 41, February 12, 2025, referred to appropriations.
Recognizing the good delegate from Washington and Frederick County. Not here? Okay. We will not recognize them then. We're holding it. Okay. Special order calendar number 4. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 161, Primary and Secondary Education Comprehensive Health Education Framework established. Favorable report adopted.
Recognizing the special order of the bill. Gentlelady from
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Carroll County.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Amendment number 193927-1.
Amendment number 1.
Moves much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
So basically, I'll go on to the amendment, but I did have a couple follow-up questions from our discussion yesterday, if that would be okay with the floor leader.
Yes, good morning.
Morning. Okay, just to clarify, so can parents still opt out?
You can opt out of the family life portion, but you cannot opt out of the sexual identity, gender identity portion.
Okay. Do you know if there were a lot of parental complaints from parents in Carroll County about this?
I do not know.
All right, I spoke with my school board, and there were not any complaints to her knowledge. Okay, so that's just clarifying that. And we talked about the Carroll County, so the Family Life Committee. So just to confirm, each county has its own committee? Is that how it works?
In the legislation, yes, and the committee will be made up of educators, health experts, and members of the local community.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So my amendment is basically, if you look at the amendment on your floor systems, so on page 1, line 9, I would like to change from opting out of a certain topic to certain topics. So that would include both sections of that bill, so that there would be an opt-out for both of those curriculums, rather than breaking it out separately. And then if you go on to page 3, line 12, the opt-out would be family life and human sexuality topic, change it to or gender identity and sexual orientation topics. And then line 13, change topic is to those topics are. So that would encompass both sections of the bill. And then the last change would be line 19, under the topic of the students, it would be as students who opts out of that particular topic. So basically, rather than parsing out both sections of the bill, we would like to be able to continue to follow what we have decided in Carroll County was the best way to move forward. And the fact that we don't have a lot of complaints, everybody seems to be working pretty happily with it. And as I stated yesterday, There's not a huge number. It's in elementary school, it was 50-50. So 50% of our parents opted to stay with the state curriculum, the way that it is. In middle school, 59% stayed with the state curriculum, and in high school, 65%. And so, being that it doesn't seem to be like a huge problem overall, we would just really like to be able to have local control and parental control for our children in the way that our Family Life Curriculum Advisory Council came up with. And we feel that that was a good compromise, and it's keeping with the spirit of what the law is. And I know that that can be parsed into, that argument, but I think that overall, honoring what parents would like to do, I think is extremely important. So those are my comments on the amendment.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I would urge you to reject this amendment. Currently, the Maryland State Department of Education, along with representatives from every jurisdiction in this state, came up with a comprehensive health framework. The purpose of that framework is to make sure that all of our children feel included when they attend school, to make sure that they feel represented. And quite frankly, everyone's doing a good job except my good friend where she lives in Carroll County. We cannot, and what we will not do, and what I will not let happen, is for us to say to some kids, come to school, but we're not going to talk to you about your gender identity, about your sexuality. We're not going to tell you what's scientifically and medically appropriate. This is in the health education article because this is how we keep kids safe. We keep kids safe by teaching them what is medically and scientifically correct, what is appropriate. We don't want our kids learning these things on social media, on Snapchat, or whatever else. That is absolutely not what we want. And so I would urge this body to protect our kids and to ensure that they remain safe, and I would urge the rejection of this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise and also ask this body to reject this amendment. It might be a shocker to the people on this floor to find out that I'm gay. I'm sure you all have never heard that before. And the fact is, I was never always out. I was deeply closeted during my entire life in high school. It was very clear that being out was not safe. It wasn't a matter of my family rejecting me or supporting me. It was the fact that I watched the only student in our school get bullied so ruthlessly that he tried to kill himself. I share that because there is a multitude of reasons people do not come out. They come out because they will be rejected by their family, as we know from national data. They won't come out because they will be bullied in their schools. They will attempt suicide to get away from the harm. They struggle massively. Those kids still are who they are. They deserve access to education. They deserve access to knowing who they are and understanding safe, healthy relationships, what a safe, healthy relationship could look like. Because they may still be practicing and inside of those relationships even while they're in the closet. People who are out deserve access to that information. By splitting out this information and not offering the opt-out provision, we acknowledge that different sexual orientations and identities exist in our school system. And if somebody still wants to opt out of the entire family life and human sexuality curriculum area? They can. They're allowed to do that. But what school systems can't do is erase people like me. They do not get to act like we don't exist. We are part of this state. We are part of every district here in Maryland, and we deserve to be acknowledged and respected accordingly. If people want to opt out of family life and human sexuality, go for it. I think it's a terrible idea, but that's your right. It is not the right of the school system to act and give an option to act like all people don't exist. And finally, Madam Speaker, I want to share that this is not just an emotional component to me. This is a logistical problem. All of us on this floor have a sexual orientation and gender. All of us do. To say that we can opt out of sexual orientation and gender identity would inherently frustrate the entirety of the health education curriculum, the entirety of it, because it's woven into every other section of the health education curriculum. Healthy relationships, that is straight couples and gay couples. Gender, having to do with body image, gender impacts all of us. By suggesting that there's some kind of opt-out for sexual orientation and gender identity, while the good delegate's intention might not be to just erase queer identities, it inadvertently will erase all identities and give the option. How do we teach anything? How do we teach anything if we ignore all relationships, if we ignore all sexuality, if we ignore all gender? How would we ever teach anything? So with that, Madam Speaker, I urge that we resist this amendment. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Speaker,
Gentlelady from Anne Arundel.
I have a question for the floor leader.
Floor leader.
Yes.
Good morning. Just so I'm clear, this bill will not allow parents to opt out of HIV/AIDS education. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we cannot opt out of that.
Correct.
Okay. Does this bill or do parents have the option to opt out of gender identity and expression, which starts in kindergarten?
Well, and let me check to see exactly what happens in kindergarten.
That's on page 21 of the Maryland Comprehensive Health Education Framework.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Just 1 second. Okay. Kindergarten, gender identity expression. Kindergartners will learn to recognize a range of ways people identify and express their gender. They will recognize it's important to treat people of all gender identities and expressions with dignity and respect.
Okay, that's kindergarten. Okay, how about the fourth grade lesson on same gender physical and sexual attraction, which is on page 22?
Fourth grade, there is, in the sexual orientation identity, they identify sexual orientation as a person's physical and or romantic attraction to an individual of the same and or different gender.
Okay, and how about page 23? Can parents opt out of the sixth grade lesson on sex assigned at birth?
So your pages are different than mine. So what grade are you looking at?
All right, I'm looking at, I read this page by page, the Mental Comprehensive Framework. Okay, so if the pages don't correspond with yours, I mean, the lessons are still the same. So this is sixth grade, the lesson on sex assigned at birth.
Sixth grade, let me find, 1 second while I find sixth grade. Healthy. On page 33. Sixth grade, gender identity and expression. Define sex assigned at birth, gender identity, and gender expression. You cannot opt out of that.
They cannot opt out of that.
Correct.
Okay, can parents opt out of the seventh grade lesson on masturbation, oral, and anal sex?
Yes, you can opt out of
Okay,
that.
they can. See, the thing is that these issues have not been just raised in Carroll County. They've been raised in Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, and across the state of Maryland. You have parents that have religious and cultural beliefs that have been dismissed, and frankly, our job as parents is to protect our children. It is not up to the schools to teach our children things that don't align with our values. So if we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion, we need to look at the diversity of our communities and parents who do not want their children learning these lessons.
So that wasn't a question, but Madam Speaker, may I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm, as you all know, and I know you're new, but I have 3 children, so I'm well aware of a parent's job, and that it's to protect and take care of your children. And I do that every day with my 13-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 10-year-old daughter. And what I will say is that I find it refreshing that you are talking about diversity and inclusion. So thank you for that. What I also will say is the courts, the federal district court in 2023 denied in Montgomery County, not an on-point case, but similar, and then the higher court, the Fourth Circuit, said that parents do not have a right to challenge a lack of an opt-out policy. So that is pending in the Supreme Court right now. They said that that is not a right.
So you're making it clear that it's not a right for parents to have a decision in their child's well-being, their child's education. Parents should always have the autonomy to opt out of any and every lesson especially that's in this comprehensive framework. So I encourage you all to take in what was just said, and also, you know, my friend, the good delegate there that made the amendment, I would like you to strongly consider voting on this amendment. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, go ahead.
Part of an education is learning about different cultures, different people, and how others live their lives. That is education. And that is what we want to teach our children here in the state of Maryland. I think that that's part of being a great parent, not a good parent. Teaching my children how to appreciate people that don't look like me. Teaching my children to appreciate and respect people that don't live their life the way that we live our lives. And that there is absolutely, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And for all those reasons, Madam Speaker and colleagues, I would urge you to reject this amendment.
All right. Gentleman from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to take a quick moment for everyone to take a recognition that if this amendment is voted down, the option to opt out will still exist. It'll just exist in the worst way for our students. It'll exist as the parents will just choose to keep their students home for the entirety of the curriculums when they're put through, for example, 6th grade health week class. They'll learn what's happening that week, and the parents will say, hey, I'm gonna go pull my kid out of school from 2 o'clock on for the rest of that day. Or they'll keep them home for the entire week, so they're gonna miss their math class, they're gonna miss their reading class, they're gonna miss all of the other parts of their day because of those decisions that are made by those parents. So it still will exist, it's just not gonna exist with the ability to take them out for an hour of class, find an alternative instruction for them to have, and then put them back into their next class so they can continue to learn. So you can vote against this amendment, but it's still going to exist, but you're choosing for it to exist in the worst ways for those students. Regardless of what their parents think, right? Regardless of what their parents think, for those students, they'll be missing very important class instruction time around the critical math and reasoning subjects that we have. And so this provides an option for those parents to work with those students and with Carroll County, with our Board of Ed, to make sure those students stay in their core curriculum classes, that they do not miss that additional time, and that it meets the framework that the parents have for what they want their children to learn. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Young lady from Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I ask the floor leader a question or two?
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hi. You know what? I'm sorry, Madam Floor Leader. I'm not on the committee. So I'm a little confused. Is there anything in this bill, and I know I should have read it in a little bit more detail, is there anything in this bill that says that parents are not allowed to talk to their children?
No.
Oh, okay. Is there anything that says that parents aren't allowed to go over homework assignments or school assignments with their children?
No.
Is there anything that says that parents aren't allowed to give their children religious education?
No.
Oh, thank you. I was just really confused.
Thank you.
Any further debate?
Madam Speaker.
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask some questions of the offer of the amendment. Yesterday, you were offering statistics from the parents of Carroll County. I'd like to ask you, do you know the percentage of LGBTQ youth that have experienced parental rejection?
I do not.
Okay, that's 57%. Do you know the percent of LGBTQ youth and transgender youth who feel unsafe in their school setting?
I don't have that data.
I'm sorry that you don't. It's nearly half of the students who feel this way. And in fact, bathroom and locker rooms are where LGBTQ youth feel the least safe. Thank you for answering my questions. I'd like to continue, Madam Speaker.
Go ahead.
As this amendment is being offered, it is totally ignoring the life statistics of LGBTQ kids, as it is every year this amendment is offered. Most years I talk about my daughter. This isn't about my daughter. This is for the LGBTQ kids in Carroll County and around the state of Maryland. What we've heard today is that it should be about parental rights and values. But in fact, education in this country has always been about inculcating American values, and in this case, Maryland values, and it's the value of the majority of Marylanders to value these students. I've also heard a lot of times that you don't want bullying, that you want tolerance. But the truth is, amendments like this tell LGBTQ kids that you have no value, that you can be erased, that you can be ignored, and maybe some people will generously tolerate you. I don't know a single person who is LGBTQ, black, brown, different in any way, shape, or form, who wants to be merely tolerated in this world. Amendments like these lead to family rejection, in some cases self-rejection, the homelessness statistics, the suicide statistics. I'd like to lastly just say to the LGBTQIA plus kids in the state of Maryland, and specifically in Carroll County, that the amendment that's being offered today to erase, ignore, and tolerate you will fail. And that is because the majority of this House of Delegates value you. We don't merely tolerate you. We love you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I certainly appreciate the robust debate. However, I will contend, as I did last year, Carroll County teachers do treat all of our children with respect. And I also believe that this should be taught at home, and I don't think that's something that you can necessarily legislate. We have a very strong anti-bullying policy, and when you mention the American values, the Supreme Court case that is pending was brought by parents who are not just the Muslims, Roman Catholics, Ukrainian Orthodox, and the policy, in their opinion, violates their First Amendment rights to freedom of the religion that they want their child to be governed by and taught. And so I just contend that there's assumptions being made, and I don't know where the source of your data was, and I'd be certainly happy to see it after the fact. But we do treat our children with respect. We do try to put everybody in the light that both has the balance of the parental rights as well as the proper education. And so for that reason, I press my amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate? Okay. Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? Clerk will take the call. There being 92 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Okay. Yeah, hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 7. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 273, residential leases, late payment penalties, calculation. Favorable report adopted.
Okay. Anybody recognize the gentleman who made the motion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. The amendment number is 663027/1.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered, the reading of the amendment.
Order.
So, Madam Speaker, I did some research on the subject of late fees, and my concern yesterday in the debate, or back and forth, not a debate, was are the courts actually awarding these late fees? And so I went into the real property article 8-401, and so I'm going to read here. If when in the trial occurs it appears to the satisfaction of the court that the rent or any part of that rent and late fees are actually due and unpaid, the court shall determine the amount of the rent and late fees due. Further, it says that determination of rent and late fees shall include the following: rent claimed, rent accrued after the date of the filing, late fees accrued in or prior to the month in which the complaint was filed. The problem that I'm seeking to solve with the amendment goes a little bit farther here, because it says in the case of a residential tenancy, the court may, not shall, may also give judgment in favor of the landlord for the amount of rent and late fees determined to be due together with costs of the suit if the court finds the residential tenant was personally served with a summons. So the amendment is fairly simple. If we're going to pass a bill that speaks to late fees, in other words, we are saying as a legislature that we are authorizing that late fees be collected. Now, granted, we're making some changes and saying you can only charge that on the unpaid portion of the late fee, which I'm going to support the bill, just to be clear, because I believe it to be good practice. But in the setting where a landlord goes through the following exercise, which is in Maryland law, you have to file a 10-day notice. So it looks like this. You have to post this with the tenant. The tenant has 10 days to cure this before the landlord can then go to the courts and seek a judgment. And so after they file with the courts, let's just say it's 2 to 3 weeks before you get a court case and you get that judgment. My testimony to the legislature is when that judge awards that judgment, they're awarding the rent, the past due rent. I don't know whether they're doing this 100% of the time or whether they're doing this for a few landlords or whether it's just a few judges. But what I'm saying is that we may award late fees. Tenants are giving ample time, in my case, I would say 30 days between the day they were first notified that they're late on their rent and by the time the courts make a judgment. That's plenty of time to cure the default, which is to pay the rent and the late fees. So my bill is saying that the courts shall, not may, award those late fees that are due and payable under the contract. So if we're going to pass a bill, we talk about late fees. If we're going to make this amendment, which ultimately I'm going to support this bill, I'm just simply asking the courts to enforce that which we are authorizing under the legislature. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am going to ask the members here to reject that amendment. Number one, we are speaking in this legislation simply about unpaid unpaid rent. This is a clarifying bill. What the gentleman is suggesting is attempting to remove some of the judicial proceedings from the court system. That is not what this bill is about. This bill is very simple. It has one word in it, unpaid. What we're doing here is collecting late fees for unpaid rent, which is, by the way, and I appreciate the gentleman discussing this with me previously. I really do. We disagree, but I appreciate the discussion that we've had. On the form that is prepared, he is correct. When you file, when you file for late fees, you have to go to, get a form, a specified form, and on that form, it talks about, it allows for the calculation of what the landlord is asking for, and in that calculation is, in fact, the late fee that the landlord is attempting to collect. So that is already on the form. It is already being discussed by the judge, and is at the judge's discretion on how to award these late fees. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would suggest that we reject this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And not to belabor the point, but while we give the judiciary some discretion by using the word may not shall, we're not giving the judge's discretion when it comes to the calculation of the past due rent and late fees. Quite often the word shall exists there, and so the point is that the courts can't ignore the landlord in a contractual relationship with a tenant when the landlord and the tenant agree to certain obligations and responsibilities. The landlord's responsible for providing housing. The tenant is responsible for paying the rent. It's a pretty simple relationship. Let me just say one last thing, and Madam Speaker, I'll call a vote, please. So what is happening additionally is when the courts are not awarding the late fees, what does happen is that tenants do want to stay, which means they end up paying their rent less the late fees. And so what the tenants are then saying to many of these landlords is, well, the court struck the late fees. I don't have to pay late fees to you. And actually, not only do I have to pay the late fees that the courts didn't award to you for last month, I'm not going to let you charge me late fees moving forward because I can tell what the courts are doing. And so my amendment, while I understand it's a judicial proceedings issue, we're in the real property article, what we drafted as an amendment is absolutely not in the same section as this bill. What I'm trying to cure here is this general principle that the courts, I think, have an obligation in a private contract, which is the landlord-tenant relationship, to not only respect the idea that we are saying you can collect late fees because we're passing a bill to do so, but that we also expect the courts to honor that commitment to the landlord for the basis of which they're charging the late fees. It's to cover their costs. So, Madam Speaker, with that, I'll support the bill, but I'd also ask the body to support my amendment, which I think adds to and doesn't take away from the general principle of what we're trying to do here.
Okay. Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 92 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker,
Yes, go ahead.
I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 193924/1.
Amendment number 1.
Body, this amendment, I'm sorry, catching up here. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Body, this amendment, simple amendment, we talked about this bill a little bit yesterday, a little bit today. This is a one-word bill, unpaid. This amendment simply adds on line 6 the word tenant, landlord and tenant. So it simply adds the word tenant to the bill. We had a bill last year that added house tenant and landlord rights, and we would like to add the word tenant to the bill. Simple one-word bill, and this adds that. So I had a discussion with the bill sponsor and the floor leader this morning, and I'd like to move the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And to the gentleman, I do appreciate the opportunity to have read the amendment prior to standing here on the floor. I am, however, going to ask the body to reject this amendment. There's a couple of things in here that I think changes the scope of the bill. And again, this is a bill that is talking about payment of unpaid rent, period. That's all this bill does, as my mom would say, period, dot. One of the things that the gentleman is speaking about in his amendment, it applies to landlords who rent 5 or more dwelling units. And that is not part of the intent of this legislation. So ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the gentleman giving me the advance notice of the bill. I would ask this body to reject this amendment, however. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Maker of the motion.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Body, I ask you to accept this amendment. It's a simple amendment, and therefore I move the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? No. The amendment fails. Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? Clerk will take the call. There being 92 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 5. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 194, Consumer Protection, Retail Sales, Reimbursement of Shipping Costs. Favorable report adopted.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor?
Madam Speaker, I special ordered this.
And?
I don't have an amendment at the desk yet.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, I do have an amendment at the desk on this bill. It's not the amendment
And I have an
offered by
amendment too, and I special ordered it.
Do you have it at the desk?
Yes, sir.
Oh, well then, please proceed.
Got to clarify yourself. Maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, everyone. We're rusty at this, I think. I had some concerns about this bill. And one was the shipping issue, which we can talk about if the delivery tax gets passed. Hopefully it will not. The other was about the really severe penalties in this bill.
I had to interrupt you. You need
Okay.
to offer your amendment before you start talking now.
Okay. I am leading up to that, Madam Speaker.
Go the other way.
Okay. My amendment is 193626/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After speaking with the floor leader on this bill, I realized that the committee had some of the exact same concerns that I have about the penalty provision of this bill. And it is my understanding that the committee will be offering an amendment to fix this. So with that, Madam Speaker, I will withdraw my amendment, and I would like to recognize the floor leader from the bill.
Who's the floor leader?
Madam Speaker.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
All right, so if this is a procedural part, I would offer another amendment. Should we do that at this point?
So yes, I withdraw my amendment and yield to the floor leader of the bill, please.
Okay. So offering amendment 953226/1.
Amendment number 1.
Be so much considered the reading of the amendments. The amendment number 1.
So ordered.
Oh, sorry. So we're all jumping the gun. We are getting rusty. All right, we'll be in amendment number 1 on page 1 in line 6 after, and we're going to insert the purpose of this amendment is to strike the civil penalties from this bill. So this is the language that is needed. The criminal penalties, I'm sorry, from this bill. So we're going to add amendment number 1 that is going to insert after certain civil, and then in amendment 2 on page 3, strike the article that talks to the criminal penalties. Please move the amendments.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk 633720/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe in consultation with the floor leader and the committee chair that this amendment will be accepted as a friendly amendment. It simply would clarify the process in the original legislation by which the retail establishment or the shipper would effectuate making the return of the item from the person who bought it. It would clarify that it has to be some type of fault or mistake of the retailer or shipper and not just something that was incorrect inadvertently or on the part of the potential purchaser, and tighten up the time frames and clarify that language. In consultation, again, I believe with the floor leader and the committee chair, the committee would accept this as friendly. I hope that's accurate.
Yes, we accept this as a friendly amendment.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and it really has the intent of just clarifying the legislative purpose, and I think makes the bill better for all. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered for printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 6. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 270, Data Center Impact Analysis and Report. Favorable report as amended, adopted.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. The amendment is 263728.
Amendment number 1.
Move so be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you kindly. So, as everybody here knows, we're under a pretty heavy budget crunch. The last time I checked, we were $2 billion underwater. And I think we should be skeptical about any spending, any additional spending that crosses our plate from this point. The fiscal note shows over $500,000 in expenditures as we analyze this issue. So I understand why it's important to consider data centers, the use of data centers, the growth of data centers in our state. That's going to be a growing industry, and I think we all understand all the implications, but especially the energy implications. But I think spending taxpayer dollars, further taxpayer dollars, for planning for private industry really isn't the right way to isn't the right way to approach this. So what this amendment does is it makes the study and report contingent on funding from private industry. I think we shouldn't put this on the backs of taxpayers, and this certainly isn't time for increased public spending, frankly, to plan for private industry. So I think making the spending for this study and report contingent on private industry is the way to go, and I'd move the amendment.
Floor leader, chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do appreciate the intent of this amendment. We'll be asking the body to reject this amendment for several reasons. One is, and we are obviously in consultation with our budget committees to make sure this is taken care of, but it's kind of, if I'm having an industry pay for an analysis, I'm going to get a very slanted analysis. And so I'm not really, beyond the fact of not really being in the mode of forcing people to, businesses to do things like analyze whether they're good or bad for the state, that really is incumbent upon us as a neutral party. If I ask the data center companies to tell me if they're going to be valuable to the state, of course they will. If I have them pay for it, then they're going to have their input, and it's going to be a very slanted input. We're not going to be able to depend on that. So it's almost a waste of time. In addition, we can't really require a private entity to pay for something that we were going to do. Again, we're just not in the business of forcing our businesses to operate that way. So I do understand the intent, and I more than ever understand during these budgetary times how we have to be, very cautious with our money. But there really is no way to work this bill or this amendment through, because we can't. It's not constitutional to force them to pay for our study, and I really don't trust them to do the study on their own. Again, I do appreciate the sponsor in this amendment, but I just don't see how it's workable, and I don't trust the outcome unless we're the ones paying for it.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the point that the good gentleman from Charles County is well taken and understood. But when we have developers come in and big business, we make them do a traffic study, infrastructure study, and let us know how it's going to affect us. And then, in turn, we analyze that report. Our counties, local municipalities, even the state, and say, well, we agree with this or we disagree with this, but we make them do all of the groundwork, all the expensive research, all of the stuff it takes to study this and put it on their financial balance sheet, not our taxpayers. Because what if one of the data centers is a horrible idea? Well, we just asked the taxpayers to shell out $500 million, or 500,000. Thank you, buddy. Whatever. Hey, 500,000 to tell them it's a horrible idea. Make them do the work, and then we have oversight over it without putting it on the taxpayer's dime. We're going to get the same type of report, and these people that are building the data centers everywhere around the country right now know how to forecast and project. Chips are getting better every day. That's why data centers take so much energy, because the water to cool the chips. Chips are getting better every day. Look at your phone. How much better has it gotten in the last 10 years? It's because of innovation, entrepreneurship. These data centers have to forecast 10 years out, 15 years out. They have a pretty good idea of what a chip's energy consumption is going to be. Right now, it's 10 times more expensive to run AI than it is Google because of the chips. The chips are going to get better, I promise you. Let's stop asking the taxpayer to pay for a fee that only is going to enrich the data center. And if it's not a good idea, we still paid the bill for a very bad product. And with that, I think this is a very sensible amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do appreciate the fact, I think we are all on the same sheet of music, but I want to be very clear that this amendment doesn't require them to do the study. It just requires them to pay for our study, and that's not workable, that's not constitutional, so that's not going to work. Two, I want to be very clear what this study is for. And again, because I think we're on the same sheet of music here. Right now, like my county, for instance, the developer is telling my county commissioners that this one data center is going to raise them $7 million of taxes a year. Now, they can't tell you how. So right now we're trying to have somebody establish the air and water quality issues
a forecasted energy consumption. And that's a huge thing because right now Maryland does not have we do not create the energy we need. So we're putting all of these ticks on a very dry vein. So I don't trust the industry because I've read some of their studies and they'll tell you just how great they're going to be for the economy because they'll let you know about that construction worker and the amount of money that he's going to get paid regardless of the state he lives in, but where he's going to eat his sandwich in the morning, where he's going to eat his dinner, where they're going to make it look like this is the best thing since sliced bread. Man, I'm feeling old saying that. But my point is, I don't trust them to do this analysis. Again, I want the sponsor and everybody here, we're on the same sheet of music. I just don't have the faith that you do. I don't want them to have their hands in this at all because I don't trust them. Because their job is to sell us these data centers. Their job is to tell us how great it's going to be. It's our job to protect our community and protect our citizens from what could be a very bad investment. Again, I want to make it very clear, I want us to do this study. I trust our neutral arbiters way more than I trust the data centers. And constitutionally, we cannot make them pay for it. So the only way that we can do this to get to the bottom of it is we do it ourselves. So for all these reasons, I would ask that you reject the amendment.
Okay, maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Very briefly, I wanted to make 2 points. I think the bill generally is well structured, but I will say that if we are concerned about the industry being involved in it, I only see one amendment on the bill, and the amendment adds industry experts to the study. So if we're concerned about trusting the industry, I don't know why we've included them in the study. But I think the overall point of the amendment that I'm offering today is that this is not a public function. It is not the purpose of the taxpayer to pay for the planning for private industry. And we are starting the session with a $2 billion deficit, and we are facing what appear to be the biggest tax increases in the history of the state. So I agree with the general purpose of the bill, but I don't think it is the purpose of the taxpayer to pay for corporate interests, and I don't think this is the time to be increasing spending. I think it's a very reasonable amendment, and I'd ask the body to support it.
Committee Chair.
And just briefly, thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, the reason we have some industry experts on the panel is because we're the one who's going to control the outcome. We will listen because obviously we can't do it by ourselves. We want to have the input that we could have. However, they're not going to be the arbiters of the final decision of the report and the analysis. Because as I said, I don't trust them. That's why we have other individuals. We'll be controlling the way the data is input and what comes out. And when we say that's not a public function, let's be very clear, it may not be, but it will be the public will be the ones that get punished. Our ratepayers are the ones that are going to be punished when we don't have enough transmission lines because we have all these new data centers down here. We don't have the water that we need because of the cooling. We get the backup generators that they plan on using because they want to come down here and basically just use all of our energy. So the public will be punished severely if we don't do this right. And I want to be very clear. This is a very important issue. It's understated, but it's very important because the amount of energy that they use is tremendous. So I don't trust the industry to do that. I'll listen to what they have to say, just like our committee hearings. We listen to what everybody has to say. We just don't always take their word for it. So I don't mind them being a part of the study. But again, to be clear, we cannot make private entities pay for our work. That's the way this amendment is drafted. That's not even constitutional. And I don't trust them to give me the reports because I've already got them. I've seen them. They're telling me how great it's going to be in Frederick, how great it's going to be in Charles County, the fiscal impact and how wonderful it's going to be. But luckily I have critical thinking skills. So I'm not going to depend on the industry to create the analysis, and I'm sure not going to make them a private entity pay for it. So for all those reasons, and I do believe we're on the same sheet of music here, I appreciate the amendments, or the sponsor's amendment, but I would ask you guys to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? Hearing none, the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will call the roll. Take the call. There being 92 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Letters of reassignment. The clerk will read the letter.
House Bill 1297, reassigned to Environment and Transportation.
Hear no objection. The letters are ordered journalized. That ends the work at the desk. Committee announcements, appropriations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The full committee will not meet today, but listen for subcommittee announcements.
Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, the House Judiciary Committee will be meeting today for bill hearings at 1 o'clock with 130 witnesses.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will meet for bill hearings at 1 p.m.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will meet at 1 p.m. for bill hearings.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Economic Matters Committee will be meeting at 1 p.m. for bill hearings.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Government Operations Committee will meet at 1 p.m. for bill hearings. Thank you.
Are there any subcommittee announcements? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Public Safety and Administration Subcommittee of Appropriations will meet at 1 p.m. in the Baltimore City Delegation Room. Thank you.
Yes. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Housing and Real Property Subcommittee will meet virtually today at 5 p.m. Housing and Real Property, 5 p.m. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All right. Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Environment Subcommittee will be meeting virtually today at 6 p.m.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Social Services Subcommittee on Appropriations will be meeting today at 1 p.m. for budget hearings in the Prince George's County Delegation Room. Thank you.
Okay. Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Anne Arundel County Alcohol Subcommittee will meet 5 minutes after floor. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Early Childhood Subcommittee will meet virtually at 12:30 today.
Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Education and Economic Development Subcommittee of Appropriations will be meeting at 1 p.m. in the Appropriations hearing room.
Okay. Yes. Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Government Operations and Health Facilities Subcommittee will meet today at 11:30, and the login information is in your inbox.
Okay. I see it. Are there any delegation announcements? Any? Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Prince George's County Bi-County Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. via Zoom, and 9 a.m., sorry, 9 a.m. via Zoom, thank you. And the Education Subcommittee will meet at 8 a.m. via Zoom.
Okay. Any other delegation announcements? None. Any caucus announcements? It's interesting. We're going to our Black History moment.
Madam Speaker?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Esteemed colleagues, as we celebrate Black History Month, I rise today to honor a man whose name is not often heard, but whose legacy helped shape the fight for justice and equality. Esteban Hostes. His story is one of courage, conviction, and the power of collective resistance against injustice. Born in Moca, Dominican Republic, in 1919, Hostes immigrated to the United States as a child and settled in New York City. He came through a little island where the cornerstone caption reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, and your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Like many immigrants, he and his family sought new opportunities and a better future. He grew up in a nation grappling with segregation, and yet He was determined to contribute to his adopted country. When World War II called, Hostos answered, joining the U.S. Army Air Forces. He became a second lieutenant and was part of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, the first group of black military aviators in U.S. history. They were not just pilots, they were pioneers who shattered racial barriers in the military. Assigned to the 477th Bombardment Group, Hostos and his fellow airmen proved their skill, determination, and excellence despite the racial discrimination they faced. But Hostos's fight was not limited to the battlefield. He was also a civil rights pioneer. In 1945, he participated in the Free Field Mutiny, a courageous protest against segregation within the military. Over 100 black officers, including Hostos, refused to accept the racial policies barring them from white-only officer clubs. Their peaceful yet bold defiance marked one of the early organized acts of resistance against segregation in the military. The Freeman Field Mutiny was not just an isolated incident. It was a catalyst for change. The actions of Hostos and his fellow officers contributed to President Harry Truman's Executive Order 9981, which officially desegregated the U.S. Armed Forces in 1948. Their bravery helped lay the foundation for the broader civil rights movement, proving that the fight for racial justice extended beyond civilian protests into the very heart of the U.S. military. Too often, stories like Hostos remain untold, but today we recognize him not only as an African-American hero, but also as an Afro-Latino trailblazer. His journey from the Dominican Republic to the U.S. military symbolizes the intersection of Black and Latino struggles against racism. His legacy reminds us that Black history is American history, and we must be inclusive of all those who have fought justice and equality. As a member of the Tuskegee Airmen, Hostos helped dismantle racist beliefs about Black competency in high-skilled professions. The Airmen's outstanding service set the stage for greater opportunities for Black and Latino individuals in aviation and the military. Today, they remain the symbol of excellence, resilience, and perseverance in American history. In conclusion, Esteban says Hostos' contribution to our nation should never be forgotten. His story is my story, our story. We too are America. His courage is in both war and the struggle for civil rights paved the way for future generations of Black and Latino service members. Today, as we honor him during Black History Month, let us remember that his story is not just about the past, but it is about the ongoing fight for justice and equality that continues today. Hostos gave his life for his country, dying in a B-25 missile crash. He was survived by his wife, Iristela Lind Hostos from Puerto Rico, and their two daughters, Marilu and Rosalie. As we reflect, let us lift the voices of those who helped shape a more just and inclusive nation. Let us ensure that heroes like Esteban Hostos receive the recognition they deserve, and let us continue to strive for a country where equality is not just an ideal, but a reality for all. Thank you.
personal or guest announcements? Chairman?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just take a moment to, first of all, I've been receiving a lot of questions about my vice chair, and I want to thank Trooper Poole and Trooper Barham for yesterday for their rapid response and taking care of them. As you see, I have his replacement here today, but little Brian Crosby won't be here long, and I didn't use a delegate's name, but I want to let everybody know that my vice chair is fine. He's out of the hospital. He's doing well. And I don't want to violate HIPAA, but maybe he just needs to learn to clean his ears better. So it was not as serious as we thought, and he is doing well. So thank you for all your concerns. I've let him know. Thank you.
All right. Any other personal or guest announcements? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is my great pleasure to introduce the doctor of the day who drove all the way here from District 9A through the snow. Dr. Sunny Goel. He is an ophthalmologist, a laser eye surgeon, a cataract surgeon, and he has offices in Columbia and Towson. Colleagues, please give him a warm welcome.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a quick reminder to the body that we are having our Vampire Caucus meeting on February 19th, the blood drive. I printed off some statistics. Over the past 20 years, blood donation is down 40%. This comes from the director of the Red Cross in Frederick, Howard, and Montgomery counties. So February 19th, please get signed up. And for all of you wearing red on the floor today for Valentine's Day, it signifies the Vampire Caucus as well. So thank you, and we'll see you on February 19th. I want to drink your blood.
Any other personal or guest announcements? Seeing none. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will take the call. There being 129 members present, and the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Thursday, February 13th at 10 a.m.